Welcome to another episode of the Core podcast. If you've listened to any episodes before, you might have heard me chatting away about my dyslexia and my dyscalculia. And interestingly, for me, it wasn't finding my tribe. But Jamie, who's in this podcast today, it was definitely finding his tribe. How moving to the military opened doors for him, made him found like he had a place to be, but also so much has happened in his life. He's such an inspiration. How he has gone through so much medically. He's also climbed such huge mountains, literally. And, there's so much to learn from in this episode. If you delve in, you will find so many coping mechanisms and why AI is allowing us to open the landscape for allowing people to be part of cybersecurity. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Jamie. Welcome to the Core podcast. I hope you're well.
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. Eventually, we're here, Kelly. We've actually got together to do this show.
Yeah, we were just catching up online to the audience listening. It's actually taken us a year. I think we first started talking when we did a big focus on mental health. Luckily, the diversity has brought us back together again in this conversation. So I'm delighted that you're actually on the podcast. So that's very, very exciting because you're a very, very busy man. You're all over the place. You're home. You're based in Cardiff right now. That's home.
Yeah, so currently I'm in our studio in Cardiff. I've got a couple of days. Well, I've got a day before I'm back on the road again. So it's really nice to be able to kind of get the show in and spend some time with you before I head back out into my hectic life.
I like it. I'm trying to convince the guys whether we can take the podcast on a road trip, but actually talking you offline, I'm not sure whether that's what I really want to sign myself up for. It's probably safer just staying in one place all the time. For anyone that doesn't know you, Jamie, I quite like to roll back to the beginning. So what was Jamie's childhood like and how did your career progress and how are you ending up where you're sat today? Because your story isn't really quite straightforward and also quite inspiring. So it'd be quite nice if you're happy to give as much of that as you're open to, from what was Jamie's childhood like? Why did he go into where he wanted to go and why is he where he is today?
Wow, Kelly. Let's start with a really small question. We'll work our way into it, right?
Perfect.
So childhood-wise, I mean, look, I was brought up in South Africa. I was born in Pietermaritzburg.
Oh, okay.
And that the significance around that is my childhood was really the apartheid. So I grew up in what I've always described as a civil war because there was this continual conflict that was kind of happening. And eventually my family emigrated. All my family are British. I was the only one born in South Africa, but we all emigrated back to the UK. I never really fitted in anyway because I was the foreign kid, and that kids are cruel, right?
Yeah.
So I went through school. I was bullied all the way through school. I had big ears. I was foreign. I was just different and I stood out for all the wrong reasons. So I couldn't wait to get out of education. And then to top it all off, I was also the thick kid at the back of the class. My maths teacher once told me the only numbers I'd ever make up were numbers on the dole cube. And my English teacher told me I had no concept of the English language. And the irony is every teacher I've ever had has always told me that I talk too much. Now I'm 42 years old. I'm a published co-author. I run now currently 2 businesses. I've just sold one. I've now become head of inclusion for Champions UK and I speak for a living. So that's kind of a really good way to stick 2 fingers up to those people who doubted me even at an early age. But I was always told what I couldn't do. I'll never be this. I'll never make it. I'll never achieve anything. And then I joined the army and I spent some time in the forces. And then I kind of came out and my career has changed. I've done everything from being a funeral director to a bus driver, to close protection, to cleaning toilets, to sales, to motorcycle sales. I've done everything in that kind of interim. And then one day I contracted a virus called shingles.
Yeah.
That caused neurological nerve damage. And I went to bed on the 6th of January 2014. And when I woke up on the 7th of January, I had a massive seizure during my sleep. I'd ruptured my spine and caused catastrophic damage to the lower sensory nerves. And predominantly, I woke up incompletely paralyzed. What that means is you've got complete paralysis and incomplete paralysis. So complete is where your spinal cord is severed, and incomplete is where your spinal cord is damaged, and you still have reflex and movement and that sort of stuff, but
Okay.
it still comes under paralysis.
Mm.
So I went on this kind of epic journey of identifying who I was, trying to figure out who I was, trying to learn who I was. I witnessed and experienced, discrimination, I'm going to say in that kind of term, but
Mm.
I think it was, I would say it wasn't not always meant, it was, people didn't always mean to discriminate me. And actually sometimes in that journey, when they were trying to be helpful, they were actually doing the exact opposite and they were hindering me. And I had many conversations about that with employers and what have you else. So, but all through that journey, I attempted my own life because I hit depression in a massive way, and I'm now a suicide survivor. I turned my life around with the help of some really key people in my life, and then I started playing sport. I started competing for Wales. I started competing in squash. Ended up playing at masters level. I've hand cycled. I've broken world records. I've pioneered disability sport. I've pioneered disability adventure. And then 2 years ago, is it 2 years now? 2022.
Yeah.
I broke another record by becoming the first person with complex regional pain syndrome to get to Everest Base Camp on crutches. And then the next day, I summited Kalapatar again on crutches. And so, and then that's kind of brought me back to where I am now. I'm back in the UK, and my speaking work has kind of gone ballistic, which I
Yeah.
absolutely love. And I work with schools and colleges and learning organizations as well as massive corporate events. But I love being able to give that single message out there. And the feedback I get from that is just heartbreaking and humbling and all of those good things, and then recently, I've just become a head of inclusion for a national company, which is also
Yeah.
really exciting. It's brought me back to that core where I've always wanted to see people treated fairly, and now I get to make positive change to be able to achieve that. So that is the whistle stop tour.
Whistle stop of your life.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably about 20 different episodes that I could do off on different segments of that. I think two things that I just wanted to pick through, not skipping over obviously your attempt of your own life, but you said that it was a mind shift and there were people in your life that got you through that. Was that through charities? Was that family? Because everyone I speak to about career decisions or where they've gone has seemed to been having the right mentor or the right person to say the right thing at the right time, or just to give them a boost um to the next step. So what was the catalyst for you? Was it family? Was it a person? Was it a course? Was it a
No, well,
charity?
it was a person, but it wasn't the right person saying the right thing at the right time. It was quite the opposite. It was
Ah,
the right person not saying anything at the right time.
interesting.
And I was lying in hospital bed with tubes up every orifice. I mean, they stuck tubes where I didn't even know tubes went, right? They stuck tubes where tubes shouldn't be going, okay? And there I was, like effectively fighting for my life. And someone came in to see me and he asked me one simple question. He asked me, what have I done? What have I been up to? And I started talking. And when I started, I didn't stop. And that was the pinnacle turning point, because I had never talked about my problems. I'd never talked about how I was feeling. I was just constantly bombarded with what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, what I can do, what I can't do. No one was actually sitting me down and going, right, Jamie, let's show you how to survive. Because I didn't know how to survive at that point. I didn't know what survival looked like. I didn't know what my life looked like. I didn't know what my future looked like. And all I knew was I was holding on to this level of past that I could no longer comprehend.
Yeah.
And then after 2.5 hours, he said, have you ever thought about playing sport? And I was like, dude, what's sport going to do? He said, probably nothing, but right now you've got nothing to lose. And that was that sort of catalyst into this whole new kind of um, life that I hadn't anticipated or had any rehearsal for or any training. And then I started building this network of people that had empathy, not sympathy, but empathy for my situation. They didn't know what I was going through. No one can, and not the only person, no, even to this day, the only person knows what I go through is me.
Yeah.
But they had understanding that I was going through a journey, and that those people then became my support network and still are to this day.
Mm.
And they've always been there to guide me, and the advice that I've had along the way, and it's been that side of things. I would not be here today if it wasn't for those people. So it wasn't one necessarily particular person. That was the change in the catalyst, if you like. And the other fundamental point was an event when I had a funeral for myself, and I get
Oh my
very
God.
mixed. Yeah, I get very mixed opinions on this because people are like, "Serious?" And I go, "Yes." So it wasn't a big deal. I didn't like get all my friends involved and hire a church. It was none of that sort of stuff. But I needed to grieve. I needed to lay the able-bodied version of Jamie McAnsh to rest. So what I did was I took all these photos and memories that I had of myself, of my able-bodied time, and I went off and I looked at those photos and I respected them. I remembered those moments. I cried, I got angry, I got frustrated, and then I burnt the photos. And I dug a hole and I laid those photos to rest. And by doing that, by letting go of the past, was that allowed me to embrace the future. And the truth of the matter is, Kelly, I'm never going to be the person that went to bed on the 6th of January 2014. I'm never going to be that person. Even if I woke up tomorrow perfectly able bodied, which I'm not going to, I've now got a degenerative condition that I've already been told that potentially will be my demise. Eventually, my internal organs will stop working correctly. My diaphragm will start to break down. My bladder and bowel are already breaking down. So there's already things that's happening that is going to affect me long term, and it will eventually cause my demise. And I'm cool with that. I know that. But I can't hang on that fact. So when I had that funeral, when I laid that person to rest and allowed myself to just be me and forgive myself for everything that I hadn't or couldn't or didn't do, it allowed me to embrace it. And from there, I've just gone from strength to strength.
And what I like about that is that you got, like you said, you had nothing to lose. Couldn't get any worse, could it? So there was what, like, I quite like what that person said, because a lot humans, I think, naturally don't like change. We do like sitting in our comfort zones, and like all those things that you just said, even just the sports stuff, or even from an able body, my brain's going, nah, not going up a mountain. That couldn't do that. That wouldn't happen. Where you did that also with a disability and all the of other things that could have held you back, and you still did it. But it's kind of freeing to be like, well, what's the worst that can happen now? Like I don't know,
Yeah.
is that how it felt? Kind of like, because I think we all go through motions of work of life, and are kind of told that we have to hit milestones, like you should get married, you probably should have children by this age, you should probably go to university, you should have a career, have you opened a pension up at this point, how much have you got in your ISA, or you've only got one property, if you thought about do you know what I mean? There's like all these standards of life, and that's definitely wherever you're born, or Western or whatever culture. But do you think we just adhere to the, I mean, at that point it must have been quite freeing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a funeral director, one thing I was very good at was putting people in boxes. But I think as I've kind of progressed in my life, what I've understood is that you can't be put in a box. Like, if you get confined in this space, you only ever being someone else's person.
Yeah.
And, like I've always said that the most freeing time of my life was when I became self-employed, when I became an entrepreneur and I could do things my way,
Mm.
or more predominantly my way. Where
Yeah.
when you work for someone else, you're told you're conformed, and you're told what you're doing. And for someone that's got ADHD like myself, and dyslexia and dyspraxia, I don't really conform well.
Same seeds.
Yeah.
When did you get diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia? Because
So the
I was
dyslexia
old.
and the dyspraxia, the dyslexia and the dyscalculia, sorry,
Yeah,
I was
dyspraxia. Why is
diagnosed
it the
whilst,
longest word, the hardest word?
and
I remember I got
I
diagnosed
know.
with it. I can't even spell it.
Yeah, yeah, I can just about spell it now. But
Yeah.
so I was diagnosed when I was in the army, when
Okay.
I thought I was this like lunatic and this thick
So
idiot. And
how old was that? Probably
in my
similar to me.
20s, so
Yeah,
I
same.
was at
I
20.
was 20 when I got diagnosed, and
Yeah,
that
so I
was,
was 21, I think. Yeah,
yeah.
2021, something like that. and it was just relieving, you know. I was just kind of going, and this is the
It's
thing, like,
interesting that you were relieved. I sobbed.
no, I was just like, oh, well, that makes sense, you know, like,
No, I think maybe because I'd worked so hard. I wasn't the bottom of my class. I
oh
worked
yeah,
so hard to be there. So hard. Like I put the extra hours in. I worked so hard for then someone to be like, oh, you can't sit in with your cohorts for your exam and you're going to have a mentor and you're going to have extra hours. I thought like a bit of me was like, no, like I've got here, I'm 20, I've not needed it. Why? And they're like, no, this is to help you. But I felt more like, no, you're making me different and I don't want to be different. Like I can do this even though I know
yeah.
I've got. It's funny, isn't it, how people react differently? I
Yeah, I
think,
mean, I was in the army at the time, right? So no one cared.
yeah. Yeah, well, I was
That's the
lucky.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you were in uni, you were still in education, you still had a peer group. I didn't really have that. I was
Mm.
just in the army. They were like, I don't care if you spell. Can you drive that tank? Yeah. Go. You know, it was
Yeah.
different. Can you run a mile and a half? Yeah. Oh, well, then you don't need to spell it. Run.
Yeah.
And you know, so there wasn't that. It wasn't a big deal for me, but what it did do was kind of go, ah.
Mm.
As as you are, I'm a natural born problem solver. Right? I can
Mm.
solve problems in a heartbeat. Right,
Mhm.
and as an engineer, that was like a massive
Great for you.
asset.
Yeah.
Um, and in the army, you have to be able to think quickly on your feet. I can think incredibly quickly on my feet. Right?
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't even have to think about it. I'm just
Yeah.
like, and that was a massive asset. So actually, all of the traits of dyslexia in the forces is a massive asset. I mean, I'd be throwing this out there with no scientific evidence, but I would say that there's a large majority of people in the armed forces that have got some level of neurodiversity,
Yeah.
and you know,
And I
ADHD.
think in quite high level jobs because you
Yeah,
do have to like yeah, because my one of my colleagues has gone through the ADHD and getting diagnosed, and it was when he was going through it that I was like, oh, I think I might have that too. So I'm really early stages of it, but this has been more of a eureka moment, actually more of a eureka moment for stuff like at home. Like,
yeah,
why do I leave piles around a house? Why can't I complete one certain job? Like all these like weird little things. Like why, when I'm booking something, does it have to be last minute? Why didn't I do it the week before? Like all these odd, like why am I always late taking the kids to school? I literally thought like I had a different clock to everyone else. But it's like, oh, now I know me. Like that's been way more than the dyslexia and dyspraxia. The dyslexia and dyspraxia, I felt like a dunce and was put in a different room for my exams to my mates. I had to be there an hour later. They were drinking far quicker than me. I just was really annoyed about the whole situation. But
that's what it comes down to, right?
yeah, I was like, why have they finished their exams an hour? And I was sat with this very lovely lady, like reading it all through and dictating. And I was just like, this is great, but can I just get out? Can I get out earlier?
Yeah,
But yeah, so okay, so that's, I mean, so much to talk to you about that. But I feel like we've touched on a bit of your hip where what makes Jamie Jamie. Um, so I feel like there's two stems of the conversation that I'd like to continue with and bring the audience along with us. So you've got a big passion about tech, just as
yeah,
I
I love
have,
it.
and obviously the neurodiversity works for both of us and what we've gone through with that. I was wondering, we obviously AI is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, and everyone's talking about it, and some seeing it for the good and some seeing it for the bad. I wonder from your perspective, where are you seeing AI and where are you seeing that it will help with inclusion or will it not? Because we had an example on the podcast a couple of weeks ago where recruitment companies had used top CVs to help them scan other candidates, but they didn't identify that the AI had picked up that the CVs that they had given them were all male. So when they were giving them new candidates, they were only putting men into the pool because the AI had learned the strongest candidates for this role is a man. So I was just
Yeah,
wondering on your thoughts of that, of where there's the good and the bad of the AI and where you think this might help with inclusion.
AI is. I mean, I love AI,
Mm.
but AI is like a spoiled toddler, right? So if you whatever you tell it, it will do,
Yeah.
right? And anything that has that intervention, the only thing that can be blamed is the input. So for that example, if they're only putting in male candidate CVs, then it's only going to throw out male candidate CVs back out because you're telling it that that is right.
Yeah.
The one thing about AI, and I'm gonna throw out, you know, I use AI a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I like about it is it levels the playing field. And there's a lot of people out there that don't like that. So you've got someone like me who can talk, and I can talk into a piece of AI software, explaining what I want it to say. It will then put that into a written document that is cognitive, and someone will be able to understand it.
Yeah.
So if you receive an email from me, which I know you have, Kelly, guaranteed AI has written it, because if it hadn't, you wouldn't be able to identify it.
Yeah.
So by doing that, my wife, who's also my PA, would have to read everything that left my office, right? To make sure that the person receiving it can actually understand what I'm talking about.
And
Now,
I
she
love
doesn't have
that
to
you
do
use
that.
that. Yeah, I love that you do that. So my dad's dyslexic. And I don't know why, maybe this was slightly triggering when I got diagnosed, is that I remember him always talking about himself being thick. And that was just his default. Everything he wrote, he had to get my mum to check it. He was just
Yeah.
so paranoid. And then he obviously in the 80s, like when I was born, like phones were coming out and then internet. And I just remember the computer coming. And my dad was like, why can't I just call these people? Like I'm good when I talk to them. I'm good when and I just remember his frustration. And they brought these screens that like had yellow on or meant to help, and then you could dictate to it, and then it got it all wrong still. And I just remember him being so frustrated. So I completely can identify with why that's so empowering for you, because seeing my dad go through that was awful.
The funny thing about AI, right, is people are kicking off about AI, and yet it's been running for years. I mean, like we have used AI for decades. So you look at social media, it's all AI driven. It's driven by algorithms.
Yeah.
All AI is a very complex spreadsheet, right? So ChatGPT, for example, it's just a very, very complex algorithm.
Yeah.
And you put something in and it researches. I use ChatGPT 4, which is directly into the internet. So it researches everything. And then there's a couple of arguments around AI. So how can AI help with inclusion, right? If you copy and paste everything, then you're a bit of a fool, all right? Because you wouldn't do that. If you were reading a book or doing your own research, you wouldn't copy and paste it. You would read it, get your own vision of it, and then you would write it. What AI does is it actually starts, so ChatGPT, for example, starts to learn your language, okay?
Yeah.
And it will learn how you write things. But then when you read through it, you then put your interpretation into it. And what it does is it takes away what I call white paper syndrome, where you're looking at a piece of white paper and you don't know where to start. What
Yeah.
AI does is go, don't worry, I've got your back. Start with this and then edit it. So it does that for me, right? Then once I've edited to how I want it edited and what I want to say, I then copy and paste it all again. I put it back into AI and I say, proofread it. And AI will proofread it for me. And then it will change words. Where I've used 10 words, it will actually use one. All right. And it will alter it so that it is legible.
Yeah.
Now, anything with that level of assistance for someone like me is absolutely a godsend.
Yeah.
Now, another example, I can't do my left and right. I do not know left and right.
No, me
Okay.
either.
No.
My driving test, I had to write it on my hands.
Yeah. When I was playing
And
rugby, I used to have to do the
if I'm
same.
driving. Oh my God, I've never heard anyone else say this. I thought this was
Yeah,
a
I don't know my left and right, and I can't tell the time by clock face, right?
Oh, I can't. The clock is okay. It's the left and right. If someone's driving, and says left or right, I don't know what they're saying.
No, so
Oh,
my
don't
wife
ask me
Charlotte,
how you.
she has to go that way or go that way.
Yeah, yes, exactly the same.
But I'm not very good with directions, right? So I
No,
use
me
a sat nav. But what is sat navs? Sat navs are AI. It identifies what you're doing and it takes you to where you need to go. So if you've got a piece of kit that will help you and support you, and bear in mind, in the early days of sat navs, they were like driving people off cliffs and stuff, right? Like we all remember the horror stories of AI. Personally, I think if you're driving a car and you drive into a river, then I don't think the sat nav can be blamed. Okay,
like
I
as you
think
see the
there's a
water
level of human error
yeah,
going on there. Yeah.
yeah,
And so it's the same thing. You put in a destination, you ask it what it wants you to do, and it takes you there. AI does the same. You ask for a destination, what you want to achieve, and it creates it for you. And then from that, you have the ability to then edit it and modify it the way that you want to. And very often at the bottom of it, it will say, feel free to modify this.
Oh,
So,
it's definitely getting you off the blank page.
yeah.
I
And
mean, I
so
don't.
why wouldn't you use it? That's my question. Why wouldn't you use it?
Yeah. Or sometimes, like even when I have like we talk about this with the podcast briefs, and I'll be reading up on, for example, yourself, Jamie. There is probably 20 different directions this conversation can go. And in my ADHD brain, I'd be like, oh, we could go here and here and here and here. But that's not a concise, interesting conversation. What AI does is allow me to put all the ideas into one thing, and it will come up with 4 or 5 different podcast briefs. And I can take the best bits or go, actually, no, that's not that interesting. Now I've seen it in a podcast brief. I feel like it's the first thing that can keep up with my speed of
Yes.
brain thought. Like,
See,
if you
I've
ask
got a thing
anyone else
about
to do it,
ADHD. I've got
uh,
this theory on ADHD. So
mm,
people call it neurodiverse, right?
yeah,
And they call it a disorder, which always
yeah,
makes me laugh,
I
right?
don't know, yeah,
Because it's far from a disorder. But I think it's evolution. So I think the world has become so fast, right? And it has become
mm,
so complex and multifaceted that actually it's the ADHD, it's people with ADHD that are keeping up with the world, the way that evolution is happening. And there will be a time, I'll be long gone by this, but there will be a time when the neurodiverse becomes the neuro norm, and the neuro norm will become the neurodiverse. They'll be the ones left behind, and the people that are neurodiverse will be going, yeah, I got that, yeah, a problem solved, yeah, I got all that, yeah, got all that, yeah, and they'll just be downloading information. We'll be having an overwhelm and probably some sort of epidemic in the process, but we'll download all of this information, and it
we will
all
be
gets
in bed
stored
not
there eventually.
moving.
Yeah. This is my theory on neurodiversity. I think it should be called evolution.
But I also
Um,
think there's probably a lot of people, especially of myself, like I just thought some of my quirks were quirks. It
yeah,
wasn't until you meet other people and they're like, oh, no, 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 I do that. Like you saying that left and right thing. I'm like, oh, I hadn't even put that in why I'm like that. Why did I find it so hard to learn to drive? Like, and even when it was interesting when I did my dyscalculia and dyslexia question, when they were asking me things about riding a bike and did I get on with rollerblading, and I was like, what has this got to do with anything? And they were like, can you just tell me about your childhood? Did you like riding a bike? Are you good at catching a ball? And I was like, no, what has this got to do with whether I'm dyslexic or not? And they're like, everything. And
yeah,
it was like, but as a child, I felt, what's wrong with me? Why can't I catch a ball like my brother? Like, why is it taking me so much longer to ride a bike? Why are my rollerblades on my bum all the time and he's not? Like, I always thought like there was something
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
not like wrong. Like, why am I not like I couldn't learn to skip? Oh my god, skipping. Still can't. Still can't get tied in a knot. Or I think brownies. One of my badges was to do a backwards roly poly. Could never do it, and I could never get the badge, and it stuck with me. How stupid is that? It stuck with me. Like there was
But
something
this is
wrong
the
with me.
thing, that these things do stick with us, and they stick with us
Yeah.
for a long time. And it stuck with me. Some of the stuff that's been said to me, and and been spoken at with me, has stuck with me, you know, my whole life. And now I'm a grown adult. I should be able to deal with this stuff. But it still comes back to you, and you do get frustrated. But this is where AI comes in. I have never felt more empowered
Hmm.
in my own ability of communication than I do now that I've got AI.
Yeah.
Because now I've got a tool that will turn what's going on in my head, which is complex, into something that other people can relate to. And I have done full presentations. I've done full strategies. I've done the whole works through AI. And where otherwise I'd still be sat there now going, sure how to start this, or I'm not
How do I get
sure.
it?
Because we all know that once you start, you can't stop, right? It once those brain juices start to flow,
Yeah.
and that's what AI does. It translates what's going on in my head, and
Mm-hmm.
also spell checks it,
Yeah.
so that it turns into a language that someone can understand. And then it gives me the opportunity to go through it. And I've presented stuff, and I've said to people, "Oh, there you go. Listen, I will tell you, I've used AI to translate." And they've gone, yeah, no problem. And like, these are massive corporate companies who have gone, yeah, okay, great, that's fine. And I did an interview once with Rob Page, the football manager, and I actually on stage said, I've used AI to write my speech, and this is what it's come up with. And he actually said to me, that's one of the best introductions I've ever had in my life. Because I'm honest about it. And I've done blogs to say, I use AI. What are you going to do about it? If I've been judged my whole life for
Yeah.
being the fit
You're
kid. Yeah.
a
So if
judgeable
someone
AI.
judges me for AI, it's like, dude, take a ticket and get behind the queue, right? Because you might be judging me for that, but I'm at the head of my game. And yes, I've utilized the tools available to me in order to achieve that. If I was a carpenter, carpenters back in the day used hand tools. Now they use drills. What are they, cheating because they're using a power tool? No, they're using tools available to them through the progression of evolution.
Mm.
AI is my tool of my trade.
Mm-hmm.
And do I use it? Hell yes. Am I ashamed of it? No. Is it going to help me in inclusion? Absolutely, because now it means that I don't have to have someone there to proofread everything I'm doing. As a neurodiverse person, I've got a tool that I can utilize. As someone that's disabled, even if I was, even if I had what if I couldn't read? What if I couldn't write? What if I was quadriplegic, but I could speak? I could talk into a piece of AI, which will then translate that into, a document or a writing. The world just becomes an endless opportunity.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's a lot of people that resisted it because they don't want that level um, of equity across the board. And that's what AI has done for me. It has leveled the playing field. And there's a lot of people that I know that aren't happy about that. But that's on them, not on me. So, yeah, I've got a real passion for the abilities of tools to make life better for those people that have struggled. I've struggled my whole life, and I've used tools all the way through.
Yeah. How do you think? Because you're like you're saying that, like and I've always thought this kind of like our neurodiversity and ADHD is kind of a bit of my superpower, and I'm identifying that more as that rather than something that's a hindrance. Where do you think diversity helps in? We're talking about problem solving, so for my industry, cybersecurity, that's incredibly important because, and also you can probably emphasize this from your military background. We're constantly under attack, and in a sense. Where do you see diversity and inclusion and the use of AI allowing diversity to join more sectors? What do you think? How is that going to empower businesses and industries going forward?
Communication. So, one of the biggest assets to any organization is communication. And one of the biggest hindrances to any organization is the lack of communication. So,
Yeah.
what you've now got is a tool that is built around communication. And you look at this, you look at security threats, right? So what will happen is with AI is it will speed up the process of investigation and interrogation when it comes to technological cyber attacks, which is, I mean, it's on the rise, it's on the up. I think when I had See No Bounds, our website would be attacked probably about 24,000 times a minute, with different types of, you know, tools and viruses and whatever else. I think in one day I had something like 20 million cyber attacks on our site, and our firewalls protected that. But what it means is instead of me having to, so if I was trying to identify, so someone like myself, I was trying to identify something, I would then take time to go off and try and discover what that was. Or now, because I've got a professional version of AI, which has got a research module, I can now copy and paste, copy the context I'm looking for, drop it straight into the research module. It will come back with an answer within seconds. And then all I've got to do is clarify that that answer is right. So for me, it means that I can hyper focus, get it done. I can then communicate that. I can then say, once I've got that answer, I can say, right, can you put this into an email? It'll put me into an email. I will send it over to John over in technology or whatever, isn't it? Whoever it is that's working over there, Daniel, for example. I can send it over and go, this is what's happening. Can you fix the problem?
Yeah.
Yes. Because I haven't had to try and explain it to him. I haven't had to try and get on a phone call with him because I can't write it, because I can't write it in a language that's cognitive. Everything all of a sudden is speeded up. Because it's speeded up, I'm working in a faster environment. That's not necessarily in security. It goes down in every aspect. If I get a client that calls up me and says, this is happening, or I can't do this or can't do that, I can reply, I can respond quicker, and I don't have to have the stress of my punctuation not being right. There are people out there that will purposely correct you for
Oh,
it. And
why do people do that?
because they are inferior. I used to have someone that every time I sent him a text message or an email, he would reply with the correct way of writing it. And
Yeah.
in the end, I actually had to end up having a great blowout with him and said, look, You're making me feel like I'm an idiot. He said, no, I'm just trying to teach you. I was like, people have been trying to teach me for 40 years and they haven't been successful. What makes you think that you're now going to break my neurodiversity overnight? Like, what you're doing is frustrating me and making me look like an idiot. And I'm not an idiot. And it's all about
Mine's
that
always the
language.
there and the there on the where and the where.
Yeah. Like, who cares? Do you
Same
understand what I
thing.
mean? Yes. Then why are we worried about it?
Yeah, it's the same word. Like, okay, I'm sorry, but you knew what I meant.
Yeah.
Oh,
And that was the other thing. I would go like, okay. And I would write OKAY. And he'd come back and go, it's okay.
okay.
With a
Oh,
capital O and a capital K. And I'm like, mate, get a life.
yeah. I can empathize that. Actually, mine was more family that used to do it to me. But yeah, it was just like you'd be worried to put anything out.
There's something else that technology does as well. And you'll probably emphasize this. You ever have an idea that's flowing around in your head, right? And like you need to figure out an answer for it and it's floating around and you need to brainstorm with someone, but no one can really, you can't brainstorm with anybody because they can't
Yeah,
keep up with the amount of thinking you're doing, right?
yeah,
So for example, it'd be a business name or a podcast name
yeah.
or that's quite simple. And I will just go, all right, okay. And I'll go into AI and I'll go, right, I need to think of a name that says this, does this, shows this, has this kind of emotion. I'm looking for this kind of concept. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. Give me 100 ideas and it will literally list them for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can literally just go, don't like, don't like, don't like, don't like. Oh, I like that one. I really like that one. Can you elaborate on it? Yeah. And within seconds. And then all of a sudden I can sleep.
Yes,
So
it's like you can download your brain on it, like
yeah,
fast enough. It's like the first thing that I found that can keep up.
absolutely. So why wouldn't we use it? So when you're talking about inclusion, when you're talking about technology, when you're talking about everything that you've done, if it wasn't for technology, we would still be, in ancient times, right? And technology is growing up. And within the inclusion and diversity space, within the disability space, I climbed Everest on crutches. And the crutches, they weren't your bog standard crutches you get from the NHS. They were advanced set of crutches with off-road ferrules. They had design on it that would move and all of this stuff. And if I didn't use that technology, I wouldn't have got there.
Yeah.
And it's the same with everything that I do. So I'm a massive believer in using the right tool for the right job. I won't use a screwdriver to bang in a nail. I'll use a hammer. And it's the same with everything that I do. So when I'm going through my life, I'm looking at those tools that I can utilize that will make my life quicker, easier, more efficient. I'm living in a fast-paced time, and I don't have the time to sit down and try to force my brain or force my mind to do something it doesn't want to do. So I will just utilize the tools that are there, and that's leveled the playing field. So yeah, for me, Kelly, it's a massive plus within the inclusion and diversity world. Massive.
You mentioned AI is a little bit of a toddler now, and it's going to be what we feed it and what backgrounds it's been given or what its environments or, and human perspective will have an impact on what AI thinks. How are we going to ensure that AI remains ethical, isn't biased? How do you think there's any challenges of that and keeping diversity is it across it?
Wow, what a question! And I'm glad you asked that actually. Okay, because I studied the history of inclusion. Okay, and inclusion originally started back in ancient Rome. Okay, and there's a reason why I'm saying. So the first level of inclusion was everybody is equal as long as they're a male and land owning. All right. Now in today's world, okay,
I wonder why
that
the
is
rule
like
straplines men rule the world. I don't know where that came from. Good
yeah,
to know all the way back from Roman times. Good.
yeah. So when you look at, but in those days that was inclusion. All
Okay.
right, that was and they considered that as fair and equitable. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Then as time has progressed, you move into the Renaissance and time when all of a sudden it was about language and it was language that made you inclusive. Then they went into the church, right? So then you ended up going through that kind of medieval time where the churches were formed. And now all of a sudden, the church was that place where everyone was offered equilibrium. that has all kind of progressed and changed. And if you just take the church, any church, right? Churches are predominantly "Thou shalt not judge," "Thou shalt not be judged," all those commandments. And I'm not religious, by the way, but those commandments. But that has been corrupted, and it has been utilized for those people's purposes. Okay, yet we've never squashed religion. We've allowed it. We've allowed it to kind of go on and agree. And technology is exactly the same. If we squash technology for getting it wrong, then you've got to rewrite history, because it is people that make things right or wrong.
Completely.
And like every bit of technology that's out there, the only way that we can guarantee that artificial intelligence of any form stays non-biased is by making sure that there is a big enough pool of people that is actually monitoring it, but also inputting non-biased information. So if you put in there that only men are good candidates, it is going to throw out that only men are good candidates, right? But it's about putting in non-biased information. The problem is you're asking human beings, which are naturally biased, yeah, to manage something and then ask it to be non-biased. And it's like, but that's not physically possible, because the people putting things in there are biased. I'm biased about stuff. I've got my opinions and things, but that's my right. And the problem is, if I was the one controlling AI, it would be a basic replication of my opinions and my thoughts. So I shouldn't have that power.
No. Well, should anyone?
Exactly.
I mean,
the problem is, someone has. So it's who's got the power, and that's where it stems. And like everything, when something is set up to build and develop, it is always built and developed. 9 times out of 10, it's built and developed on good intentions. Not very many people kind of go out there. Obviously, extremists do, but not many people go out there and go, "I'm going to create a place where no one is equal and everybody is going to be treated badly." No one does that, right? They create a place where people are given a voice, people are treated fairly, blah blah blah. It's then corrupted over time by people.
But it's even like the internet, wasn't it? The internet was created, it was free, everyone had access, and now there's a dark version of it.
Exactly, yeah, the dark web.
Why has someone created a dark version of it? Let's just have a nice version of it. Why do we have a dark one? But
let me tell you, if everyone learned how to play chess and just got along, like, I'll be honest with you, there'd be no wars, there'd be no arguments, there'd be no grieves. You just have a game of chess and deal your problems, right?
I mean, wars is a different conversation, but I think if you had more diverse people on the top discussing whether a war should happen, it probably wouldn't. I'm just saying.
Yeah, because to be honest with you, they'd probably overthink it. So it would probably just, but yeah.
Overthink it, but I don't know. Just
no good's ever come of it, really.
Yeah, I just can't see some of the things that have happened in more recently. If I'd been sat on any board asked that question, I can't imagine me going, "Yes, that is a definite good idea." I can't see it. I just can't see it ever. But I mean, I've never been in that position. Hopefully, I'll never have to be. But yeah,
the other thing as well is what you've got to remember. So you've actually inadvertently made a really good point, right? So the problem is what you've got is a group of scholar academics, right? And they've got a whole group of scholar academics, and they put them all in one place, and they said, right, you're the scholar academics, so you're going to be in charge of decision making, right? Well, it's one type of person, just one type. So you're in that same thing. So of course they're all scholar academics, which means they're going to be biased towards scholarship and academic. Yeah, they're not going to be necessarily open-minded to culture, to adversity, to diversity, to they're not going to be open to that, because in their opinion, everybody should have a degree, everybody should be academic, everybody should be a scholar. So if you put a load of poets in there and said, right, well, we're not scholars, but we're poets, then life would become more,
colourful,
theatrical and colourful, right? Then you chuck in a load of creatives in the mix and you go, yeah, well, we're creatives. We're not scholars or academics. We're creatives.
I'd
then
all of a sudden, around it.
Exactly, right? So now
what's happening? Yeah.
So you see the point I'm making, right? So
if
you then throw in a load of diverse you threw the creatives, most of them are neurodiverse. So you throw in a load of neurodiverse people, they're thinking something different. If you then throw in a load of cultural people, then they're thinking, they're creating culture. If everything is kind of judged off of one person or one style of person, you're not going to get diversity.
No.
And that's why it's so important to have a diverse society. It's why it's so important when you go to somewhere and there's people from different cultures. That's how we blend, and that's how we create a single race environment where everybody is thinking and acting in equal and have equity and everything, and there's peace. That's the way you create peace, is you take away the power from the one group of people and you say, well, you're not going to have power anymore. It's going to be to everybody, and everybody's going to have that power. But you still need someone to lead it. And the only way you can get someone to lead it is if you go, well, your representation of that organization, then you can lead. And it's so complicated. But like when you start looking at the disability minister, for example, as a prime example, and then you go, well, have you got a disability? No. Then how can you represent the disability community when you can't engage with the disability? Can't. The defense minister, have you ever been to war? No. Then how can you engage on defense if you don't know what it's like to be in the field?
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of our society problems are. Is the people in charge have never been there. And you can't do it. Like, I wouldn't give you parental guidance because I've never been a parent, right? So I don't have a clue what I'm talking about.
I mean, I'm a parent and I still wouldn't give guidance. Definitely winging it. Definitely wing. I could probably give you a list of not what to do. But
have them, Kelly. Have them is probably the top tip. Don't have them.
No, yeah, definitely winging it. But even so, like, even in that scenario, everyone gave their tippet of their advice, and some stuff was amazing. But at the end of the day, sometimes it was just your gut, because you were in it and you were experiencing, and they were your kid in your environment in your scenario. And yes, the advice was amazing, but sometimes it made it more confusing, because it was their experience, and sometimes their experience from like 30 years ago. And and our memory changes, don't we? You know, it all changes. So it's just, I think you've got something in there. Like, how can you be in control of something or give it or lead something if you've not experienced yourself? I think it makes it quite tricky.
Yeah,
I'd agree on that.
Absolutely.
So what is your future outlook then for diversity, tech, how that's all coming together? How we're going to be an even better race with all of this together.
Better humans. How can we be better humans?
How can we be
Do you know what, right? If people just learn to be nice, we'd be better humans, right? And it's so easy to just be nice to people. I mean, I am a massive kutcher, all right? I love a good kutch, which is Welsh for hug, for those people who don't know, all right? And a kutch is better than a hug, all right? Because it's just better.
The word's far cute. There's like much.
It is. Yeah. You know, it's just, I just love a good kutch, right? And if everybody just had a good kutch, we'd be much better people, right? We'd have smiles on our faces. It's scientifically proven that a good hug can actually decrease stress by 80%. All right, so let's all just hug. But other than that, when we've all stopped hugging, we do have to get down to it. And I think my goal, working within inclusion and diversity, and also utilizing my decades experience of being disabled and that journey and transition, what I would love to see personally and individually is I would love to see companies, predominantly most people who are in working age or working environment, spend more time in work than they do at home. Okay? And so that needs to be a better place. It doesn't need to be the sweatshops that we are used to. And it is change. Change is happening, but it's not happening fast enough, in my opinion. So what I'd like to see a future of is where the mindset changes, both for employer and employee. A lot of employees feel grateful that they have a job. Okay. And that's mistake number one. All right. The employer should be grateful that that person is investing in their company. So take you, for example, Kelly. Okay. So you've got an education and you've worked hard at that education. You told me about it earlier. You've invested in that education. You have tried to get everything in place that you've needed to get in, and that's taken thousands of pounds, right? And now you are working in that organization where you are investing all of your experience that you've got of your 21 years, all right, all of your time
Nice.
and all of your, I know, right?
Straight out of
See,
uni. Straight out of uni, if everyone else is listening.
absolutely. And to be honest with you, I can tell. But all of that time and all of that experience, you are investing into the business that you're working with now. And that investment will make that company a better place. So the company are privileged to have you, or they should feel privileged to have you. Okay.
Yeah.
And I can stand here now, Kelly, right? And I can go, you're perfect. All right. You are perfect. And you will look at me and go, well, I'm not. And I am, because you went through a job interview, you went through a recruitment process. And at the end of that recruitment process, someone sat there and went,
Yes.
Kelly, she's the person we're having. She's perfect for the role. So I know categorically that at some point you were perfect. So until we change our attitude around that and realize that actually we're here because we're the best person for the role, or we're perfect for this position, we're perfect, and we've invested a lot of money, and this company are privileged to have me, and the company goes, we're privileged to have you, and we want to invest in you because you're investing in us. Then you start getting this respect level. When you start changing that culture of value, and you start valuing the people that you work with, what you then end up having is a invested culture. So then you get a group of people that are invested in the business that they're working in. They understand that the more effort they do, the better the business becomes, the better the business is, the longer lasting their jobs are. Because let's be honest, there's two types of people in the world. There's people that are quite happy not to run a business. There's people that cannot work for anyone else. All right. So it's understanding that balance, and it's understanding that not everybody wants to be invested in. Some people just want to turn up to work, do what they got to do, and go home, and that makes them the happiest person in the world. That's fine. Invest in that. And it's, for me, it's so much pressure on society. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. You should be doing this. No, you shouldn't be. What you should just be doing is being good, decent human beings, invest in the people that are investing in you, treat everybody with equity, not equality. I actually don't believe in equality. All right. Because if we believe in equality, and I better explain this before I get lynched. If we believe in equality, then what we're saying is everybody is the same, and they're not. Everybody is different. I believe in equity. Equity creates equal opportunity. Equality means that everybody gets the same, everybody's treated the same, everybody has the same. That does not actually create equality. For someone like me, if I'm in a wheelchair, I'm only 4 foot tall, right? Which means you can give me a box if you like. I still can't get over the fence and see what's on the other side. Yet someone who stood next to me is 6'4". He can see over the fence perfectly fine. If you give us both a box, he just sees more of of what's going on the other side of the fence. And I'm still sat there in my wheelchair, 4 foot tall, only now I'm holding a box because I can't get on it. That's equality. And equality doesn't work. Build me a ramp. Don't give him a box. Save the money on giving him a box. Build me a ramp and I can see over the wall. That's equity.
Yeah.
And when people are treated with equity, everybody has equal opportunity. And that's what I want to try and create. I want to take it away from, but everyone gets treated the same. Yeah, but you can't treat everybody the same, because that would mean that everybody is the same. And we're not. You've got different needs to me. I've got different needs to you. And I've got needs to me because I'm a male. You've got needs because you're a female. I've got needs with me because I'm looking after someone at home, for example. You've got needs because you're a mother. We've got different needs. So if we then said, right, okay, so Kelly, you've got two children, I guess, two children, right? So how can we work with you to make your life easier so that you can look after your children, you can do all your motherly duties that you need to do, but we still want you to invest in our business.
I wanted to just conclude it with a bit of a fact, because I think there's a lot of people being scared about AI coming and maybe potentially thinking, oh, well, I'm going to lose my job. Actually, the World Economic Forum predicts that by 2025, AI and automation will create more jobs than they displace, providing opportunities for diverse talent to thrive in industry, but in particular the tech industry. So I actually am quite excited because I think it's going to open more opportunities and bring more people and more voices to the table, not only to my industry, but to lots.
I couldn't agree more. What a way to end the show.
Oh,
We
wow.
have gone on tangents.
We
Left,
have.
right,
I
up and
tried to
down.
bring it back because I was looking at Daniel in the corner like, I will get the podcast back to the point. But there's just no
I've sat there a few times gone, I don't know where we're going on this now. But, that's what I love about open conversation. And that's why podcasts like this are so important. And it's why, people like you and I getting into a room and having a conversation is so important. It's because it gives different perspectives. And it doesn't matter where we go on it. It's about, at the end, we come to the same place, that we agree on the same thing, that actually, AI is important. Technology is important. But nothing is more important than people and having those simple communications, treating each other right, treating each other fairly. And that is what will create a more sustainable future.
What another fantastic episode, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining. I gained some really great insights into AI, driving diversity and inclusion with the tech sector. It was such a great episode. I felt like there was so much that we could connect on, the diversity side of things, the ADHD, and just how that we can all be far more involved. Thank you, Jamie, for sharing your expertise with us and joining us. I hope next time when we can talk, there's so much more we can delve into, and the difference that you're making for diversity and how you have come over so many challenges in your life and you've got such a positive outtake. It's fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us. As always, anyone would like to join the podcast, please let us know if you have any further comments. But yes, just engage, because we are bringing the podcast for you. So please let us know what you would like to hear more of.